everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to another video. This is our second installment of weird questions. So, I think we're just ready to begin. Let's jump into it. Our first one comes from Quentin. Got my notes over here, and he asks, is there an ancient ruined city below Antarctica? Or what is under there? More ice? I think probably more ice, but this is why I like doing these weird questions sort of episodes, because I find myself pleasantly surprised with what I learn. Okay, so what is underneath Antarctica? I think they mean like underground. Below all of the ice, below the supposedly maybe soil, I don't know. It's all covered in snow and ice, but underneath of everything, under the ground. Is there an ancient ruined city below Antarctica? I had a few fall out kind of, so I'll just shuffle these up a little bit better. Ancient ruined city below Antarctica. Okay. Well, short answer, a researcher, or maybe a team, but I'm seeing somebody in particular will find something and then notify her team. She'll find, there's a researcher or a scientist out there, she will find something that answers the question of, like, what is under Antarctica? She'll find there actually is interesting stuff underneath of all of that ice, all that snow, underneath of the ground. More detailed answer. I think that what's coming in is like some kind of artifact is going to be found. So it might not be like an entire city or anything like that, but an artifact. And they're not going to know if this particular artifact was used for spiritual purposes, or if it was some kind of a tool or something that people used for working. Scientists are not going to know what exactly they found. They're going to find some kind of cool artifact, though. Not sure what it is, but it's a pretty big deal. There's celebrations, there's like great excitement. Now, as a result, everyone's going to hear about this. What with the magic of the internet and stuff like that. This particular woman, researcher, I really feel like it was a woman, especially, not just because it was like a Queen of Cups, but that was like, the energy I felt was very feminine. She's going to be given some kind of an offer that she'll turn down because a lot of people will think that she's lying. A lot of people are going to think that she's making this up. And as a result, she might be likely to turn down some kind of an offer, but in the future they're going to see that she was right. So what is the offer all about? Knight of Swords, for some reason I heard press tour, or like public tour, showing off the artifact and talking about it and giving as much information as she can. I'm hearing televised opportunities, and she'll be likely to turn it down because everybody thinks, or not everybody, but a lot of people think she's lying. What happens if she doesn't turn it down? What if she accepts the offer to go and do this? She really should take the offer. I'm just saying. She really should. Okay, yeah. It's Oh, it's outside of her comfort zone. This is why she's really hesitant. She's going to be hesitant to take it. And she might try to walk away from it at first with that 8 of Cups. This is outside of her comfort zone. It's going to cause her to feel all kinds of emotions that maybe she just hasn't been in touch with for a long time. And just the thought of continuing on and like pressing on even if other people don't believe you, and you know, being like, hey, to me this is truth, I need to talk about this could suggest this or this, you know, in regards to talking about that artifact and stuff like that. So she could just have a lot of anxiety around this type of thing. She could just be afraid of how it's going to really change her life and how it's just going to really overturn a lot of things in her life. However, there are going to be a lot of beneficial partnerships made. Work. There's going to be all kinds of work opportunities that come to her. I'm hearing research grant, even though I'm not seeing anything about money here. A research grant to go back and look for more. And what I'm picking up is like this mental image, she would be able to go lead a team, and go look. I feel like this is happening like in the future. It's not today or anything. But she's going to have all kinds of work opportunities. Like she's going to be able to write articles and pieces on this kind of thing. She'll be able to go on television and talk about it. Be able to write books, things like that. It's really going to propel her career forward, this discovery. And she's going to feel like her contribution to the scientific community was amazing. And just bringing a lot of excitement and joy to the scientific community. This is what she wants. So I hope that she would take that offer. So, okay, that artifact, that's pretty cool. What does it look like? I'm seeing just like, it's bone. It's made of bone. It's turned brown over time. That's just a mental image I saw. I'm not scientific. I don't know how things, you know, I don't know what things turn into when they've been buried under ice for thousands of years. I'm not an expert, but I just go off of what the mental images I get and what spirit tells me. It almost looks like a little belt buckle. It's not a belt buckle. It just kind of looks like one. It has a square piece, and there's a, like it's square, and then there's a little metal, or not metal, I said it was bone. Ugh. Why do I keep, because I said belt buckle, I'm thinking metal now. A little bone piece that sticks out. It is for a garment. It's not a belt buckle, but it looks very similar. It is for a garment, but they're going to learn that. But I like that at first. They're like, is this a religious tool, or is it like a thing, or is this like a tool, or is this, they're going to, that will then, once they realize it's a garment, they'll be like, okay, is this like a spiritual garment, or like, you know, religious garment? Is it celebratory? Is it a work outfit? Did it come off of somebody's work clothes? A little buckle or something made out of bone. So what does it suggest then? Because that's the really exciting part. What does the discovery of that artifact suggest? It opens up the possibility, we're going to have the opportunity to learn that that artifact suggests that people lived there, that there was maybe a settlement, with Four of Wands being like the card of like the house. There could have been settlements, or families. And then in the future, they're going to find stronger evidence to support that there must have been a settlement or something. Oops, I just dropped something on the ground. Give me one sec. Now, that first researcher or scientist that I was seeing, she was represented by the Queen of Cups. Now, there's going to be another researcher, and this might be in the future. Maybe she works alongside the first one. My apologies. I had a small interruption there. A little camera problem. But anyways, we had this Queen of Wands, which was suggesting that she was going to work alongside that first researcher. Or she might... another thing that's coming in really strongly is that she might take over that person's research after she... what? I'm kind of hearing retires or, like, goes out of the public. Like, just... I'm getting that this first researcher, whether she takes the opportunity to go tour around and talk about this discovery and stuff like that, after a while, she is going to withdraw from the public eye and won't offer any more comment on this kind of thing. Another scientist or another researcher, another woman anyways, is going to take over her research. And she wants to figure out why the people that initially had lived there no longer live there. She wants to know what happened. What caused the fall of that particular society? I mean, maybe the fact that that land is just all ice and freezing and stuff, maybe that has something to do with it, but she wants to understand exactly what. There's got to be something more. I got to clarify that. 9 of Swords and 3 of Swords, because that talks about, like, suffering, stress, and pain. And that was in relation to the peoples who maybe once lived in that area, the one who maybe wore the garment with that bone buckle or something like that on it, why they're not there anymore, what they went through that either maybe killed everybody off or caused everybody to just up and go somewhere else. Oh, they migrated. Okay, so it's not like everybody just up and died. They migrated. The world looks very different today than it did during the time those people were alive, as something that I'm hearing. Why else am I hearing, or yeah, Spirit, why am I hearing that New Zealand was a lot closer? We would call it New Zealand. It was a lot closer to Antarctica, and there was another larger land that was closer to New Zealand. What is with that, Spirit? Is that where they migrated to? They found their way. Oh, Spirit's also saying they had boats. So it wasn't like they just walked everywhere all the time. They had some modes of transportation. But it's almost like the trail sort of goes cold. It's almost like just that the rest of the evidence or information or anything like that is just cut right off. And it's almost like they're doing all this research and she's making all this progress, and then all of a sudden the trail goes cold. What is the 6 of Cups telling me, Spirit? Oh, who did their descendants? Okay, so they started off as their children. Who did the descendants of those people from the ancient days, I guess, in the Antarctic region. They migrated over to apparently New Zealand and places like this. I don't know why that's what's come in. Whatever. Now I was hearing, who did they grow up to be? And that's what researchers are going to find out. I'm hearing like which Aboriginal group of people is most closely related or would be most closely matched to the society they'll find evidence of in Antarctica. Which also makes me wonder, okay, it's Antarctica. Nowadays that place is ice and it is too cold for people to live there. The only people who live there are scientists while they're conducting their research, and even that is temporary. And lots of penguins and seals and stuff live there too. But what was that land like before people migrated and left? Okay. What about weather and stuff? Don't worry, we'll get to this. Okay, so weather. It was surprisingly warmer. The wands are that fire suit. Surprisingly a lot warmer. There was dirt. I mean, it wasn't hot or anything. It was still like cold, but it was warm enough that people could live there. And for the longest time, the climate was pretty consistent. And then, of course, over time, it changes. Things change. Now, as far as these people kind of felt about their land, they kind of felt trapped, stuck. I'm hearing rugged terrain made it very difficult to travel. They could travel. They had means of traveling, but it was difficult. If you lived on the coast, maybe it was easier because you had your boats and stuff. But I'm just getting the further inland and the further kind of towards the center of that continent that you go, the more difficult it became. And so some people felt like, some felt as though they really couldn't leave, they couldn't get out. Anyways, this group of people had a choice to make. And it was something that they debated over for a long time. I pick up there weren't that many people who lived there initially. Well, okay, the number 5,000 comes in. A lot of different clans and groups. Some of them planned because they oops. I dropped my Two of Swords on the floor, but that was their big decision to make, and some of the people had conflict with each other over it. This is such a big move, it's such a big thing, this is our home, if we leave, we are not coming back. What do we do? You know, this is dangerous terrain, depending on where you lived, but the ultimate decision was to leave. There was also conflict, within the land itself, there's a particular area that was constantly being fought over, and some people they were kind of over it. They didn't want to fight over it anymore. Now, was it like a social thing or was it a climate thing? What prompted them to leave? I'm hearing it was becoming hard to grow food. The climate was slowly changing. And over the generations, I'm getting it became more difficult to grow food. There's a woman who was in charge of a particular, I don't know if it's a clan or a big family group or what, but she's the leader. And she was given an opportunity to move her people. An opportunity. She told her people it's an opportunity to raise their children somewhere else, to raise their children in a place where there's plentiful food, in a place where it's a little bit warmer. I'm not even seeing any like greens or grass or anything. It's just like brown, almost like kind of tundra looking, but it's just it looks so dead. It began to look so dead there. And they wanted to go somewhere where their kids could grow. Will there be evidence of a city? And now I'm hearing from Spirit that to them it wasn't underground. It was just on the ground. But over the many, many years and millennia or whatever, layers, like sedimentary, is that what it is? All the different layers form on top. It's kind of like what happens with fossils, things like that. There have been changes to the landscape over the millennia. And what else can we know about this spirit? Any closing thoughts on this? Are they going to find evidence of a city under there? And they're saying, yes, we told you already. That one researcher finds an artifact, and that's evidence of people, which is evidence of society. King of Cups is representing, for some reason I just heard the greater scientific community. Very male-dominated is another thing that I'm picking up. The greater scientific community is going to be waffling back and forth on whether or not they believe this. Whether or not people are going to go back and forth on whether or not they believe this artifact was real, or if it was fake, or if it was planted there, and, or if this... Hey, and this is the card that represents that initial researcher that first came up in this reading, who was going to find that little bone thing, little artifact. It's going to be up for debate for a number of years whether or not it's true. And the scientific community is going to go back and forth whether to accept it or not. But it seems like, yeah, there's something. All right. Our next question. Oh, I didn't write down which user this came from. Oops. But they wanted to know, was Noah's Ark real? This is changing gears a little bit. Was Noah's Ark real? Was there actually a huge flood? Is the Ark still around? Was Noah and his family real? If the flood did happen, did anyone survive? Or did it happen exactly like the Bible story states, where everybody died except for Noah and his family? So, what about that story of Noah's Ark? And some cards come out, so let's see. Did the flood actually happen? I feel as though a large flood did happen. This was a very long time ago. Now, whoever initially wrote down that story of Noah's Ark, whoever initially recorded it, what was happening where they were living at the time, now in the Bible it was described as the world was a wicked place, and the world was really bad, and God had all these regrets about it. But what was happening in the place where the writer of that story is from, there was a leader who was quite greedy, King of Pentacles, corrupt, selfish, didn't care about the people in his kingdom. This person and a lot of the other people felt very embattled by this. I felt like this just, how long does this have to continue? And then, Boom, it happened. The tower, the flood. It was a devastation. I do pick up that great devastation. That entire valleys and coulees were flooded to the point where you couldn't see the tops of hills anymore. And people tried to make sense of what had just happened. You know, something I'm picturing or seeing is, of course, not everybody died. Not everybody. Many, unfortunately, many did. Many did drown. But another thing is that after the waters had receded and the waters had gone down, a big thing was there was mold everywhere. For some reason, that's coming in. There was mold everywhere. And this was like a warm climate. And of course, with all of this flood water laying around, it's very moist. And mold loves moisture a lot of times. And a lot of people began to get sick because of the mold spores. Got into their bodies, and some people survived that. Some people died of the illness related to the mold. There was just a lot more, just a lot of devastation. It was not just the flood, you know. But the people who survived were glad to be alive. And they took this as, oh, God has blessed us. And the person who wrote the story took it as, God has blessed us. You know, allowing us to live. Not very many people survived in this particular area that the story takes place in. The writer of the story suggests that everybody else died except for Noah and them, but the thing is, yeah, the person who wrote the story didn't really have all of their facts quite right. They spoke a little bit too soon. Maybe they were a historian or something from the next couple of cities over or whatever, and he just didn't have all of his facts straight when he put the story down or something. I don't know why I'm getting that with this Page of Swords. Okay. Now, why did that flood happen? Now, the way that people had tried to reconcile it was, oh, the world was so wicked that God was angry and regretted everything and sent a flood to wipe everything out and start over again. That was how they perceived it, and that's how the writer of that particular story perceived it. Why did that flood happen? I'm hearing that was part of the climate at the time. With Queen of Cups, what actually got my attention was the waves, the tide coming really close to her feet. These people lived in an area where flooding was pretty common, but it wasn't a flood on that big of a scale. That just seemed to be like a particular natural disaster I am picking up. Nowadays we might consider it a monsoon. But I'm also hearing like, well, I know a tsunami is a great wave, right? But I was hearing monsoon. I kind of saw images of a tsunami, of a large wave. And these people, apparently where Noah lived, they must have lived really close to the water, so they must have lived in an area, you know, maybe this is a certain level above sea level, and maybe they lived in a lower kind of place, like in the bottom of a valley or something, because that's what I kept seeing was a huge valley being flooded to the point where you really couldn't see the big hilltops or the little mountaintops or whatever. That was just the climate at the time, and that was a particular natural disaster which had happened. And then here's that greedy king that jumped out. It just happened to be during this particularly bad king's rule. Okay, so what about the ark and Noah and them? I'm hearing many people tried to get out by ship, by boat. This was a fishing. There's a lot of fishing in this particular town or city. Many people tried to get out before things got really bad, but I'm seeing like a big wave came and it sunk all of the boats. The person who wrote the story sees that as the wicked being punished. So was it one arc, or were there a lot of potential arcs? Now the Bible goes really specific in the measurements of this particular arc, this particular boat. Okay, so the reason, now what I'm picking up from Spirit is somebody did find plans for, like a, maybe nowadays we call it a blueprint or a draft or something, but plans to make a large boat. This many cubits by this many cubits, and this many cubits by this many cubits, and yeah, Spirit's saying, like, the ark described in the Bible, that was one of many boats. And yeah, it was quite big. However, the person who had built it, was it just one person? Was Noah even real? Because I still haven't picked up anything about that yet. But the person who built it, or the people who built it, spent 7 years doing it. Now, I think in the Bible, they say it took a lot longer than 7 years. And that Noah was, pardon me, that Noah was a very old man by the time he finished. I'm hearing Noah was a carpenter. And those were his plans. Did he know that this flood was coming? I actually pick up that he did know. Yes, he did. There's that ace. And then I have 7 of swords, which was reminding me, like, he knew? How come he knew 7 years in advance? Because I'm hearing because of how destructive this would be. He had a strong intuition. People were psychic back then. Just like people are psychic or spiritual and stuff like that now. Some people are and some people aren't. It's the same thing as back then. It was like Spirit was giving him and his family an opportunity to sneak away. He just happened to kind of be psychic, but it's like, yes. He knew that, and so he spent 7 years prepping this giant boat. Did he plan to put a bunch of animals on that? Spirit's saying no, he planned to put people in it. Oh, because here we have 6 of Pentacles. He was trying to help other people. Okay, so, and then in the Bible they say that people kind of laughed at him and mocked him, and we're like, oh, no, there's not going to be that bad of a, you know, this stuff happens all the time here. Whatever. So the Bible is suggesting that none of the other people other than Noah's family made it on board. So what's with that? If he was intending to build this to help other people. Oh, well, because first of all, some people believed him and some didn't. Many people just kind of evacuated on their own. I do think it's not just Noah who had that intuition that something was coming, and the closer that it got to the time of that natural disaster, the more and more people started to clue in. So some people did sort of evacuate on their own, or tried to get to higher ground. I'm hearing, especially with these mountains in the background here, tried to get to higher ground and set up settlements on this higher ground. Was it true that he had a whole bunch of animals? This suggests that, yeah, he had a bunch. There was a lot of space, so he didn't have 2 of every. The Bible suggests that he did, but what did happen was that they did go around and they tried to save as many as they could, and they made an effort to pair males and females, so of course they could reproduce, right? Because Noah saw that this was going to be very devastating. How do they know? Why did they come up with, like, why did they call him Noah? Like, where does that come from? How do they know all the names, like Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah? And, of course, they don't give the wives names, I don't think, in the Bible, but... They may have found his name or something. The person who wrote the story of Noah's Ark maybe found his name on, like, the boat plans or something like that. And they just assumed, oh, he's the head of the household. What I had here when I pulled Ace of Swords, or Page of Swords this time, was an educated guess. And then they just went with it. They just ran with it. Educated guess based on names that were common around the time that the story had been written. Is that boat still around? Supposedly landed on Mount Carmel or something. Some people think they may have found it in what is now called Turkey. Spirit's saying it is all turned to stone now. Two boats survived. So there was his and there was somebody else's. A smaller one. They like researchers, scientists, or whoever, or who studies that stuff, archaeologists, anthropologists, whoever, had kind of written it off as like, oh, it was a fishing boat. But this other, like the bigger one, which was apparently Noah's, had turned to stone. It's petrified wood at this point. Over time, people have found like bits and pieces off of it, whether they realized it or not is something else that came in from Spirit. And it might take a long time before anyone comes to the conclusion that yes, this is, or no, this isn't. What they were able to pinpoint is like this looks like it could have been a boat or a ship that came from however many thousands of years ago. They were able to carbon date. Or however, I'm not scientific, whatever method they use to determine how old things are. But it is all turned to stone. That's what Spirit just told me. It's all turned to stone. Is it on a mountain? Pieces of it. Pieces of it are. Other things have been washed away and broken away. Parts of it over the years have been like dug up and sold. Over the millennia, people have chipped away at it, keeping pieces of it, believing that it is Noah's Ark, and you know, had tried to profit off of that. The star, at this point now, it's more of a legend than anything, but there was truth to the story. Not necessarily every single detail was true or maybe historically accurate, but it's neat to know that there actually was truth to that story. And yeah, so that is the end of that reading. That's the end of our second episode of Weird Questions. If you have any weird questions that you want us to go over on this channel or on this series, absolutely just let me know in the comments on this video or other videos in my community section, or send me email, whatever you want to do. If you really liked this video, feel free to subscribe, hit that thumbs up, slap the notifications bell. That will let you know whenever I go live or make a post or an upload. And with that, I'm going to see you guys in my next video.